This is the Last Minute Blues Podcast with Donnie, Alex, Jeremy, and Jeff Burton.
10 seconds left. Here they are, folks. Fans in St. Louis showed up. Blues brought the season back from the brink. And you can bring out the Zamboni. They beat the Utah Hockey Club 6-1. They earn a trip to the Stanley Cup playoffs. They'll face off against the Winnipeg Jets. And the St. Louis Blues will have a chance to win the Cup this year.
Sorry, man. Sorry, guys. That was awesome. I didn't get a chance to hear that last night.
Do the Donnie Moonwalk.
I didn't have enough room last night where I was sitting to do any sort of moonwalks, but I got to do a lot of pointing, and that was good. That was good. Welcome to the Last Minute Blues Podcast. I'm Donnie Fandango, joined by Alex Ferrario from 101 ESPN, Jeremy Rutherford from The Athletic. Well, boys, I want to start with this, all right? I would like to characterize the mood in this building yesterday and initially at the Enterprise Center as puckered. like everybody was just like sort of excited, but man, it just feels like it was nervous city until goal number 2 was scored, and then it feel like everybody just collectively went, whew, like it's going to be all right.
That's wild because I didn't do that until goal number 3.
All right.
Goal number 3, because Joe even said it on the broadcast, and I totally agreed. After they went up 2-0, it's like, okay, the next one's the biggest goal of this game. Because Utah scores, it makes it 2-1, they've got life again.
Yeah.
You make it 3-0, they've got no life. And so that was the one where I kind of sat back in the chair, and I'm like, okay, good. Finally got there.
Yeah, there's a thing on press row where all the writers look at each other. And they kind of give everybody the okay of when you can start writing the story because it's not going to change.
Like the nod, yeah.
And so I think last night when it got to 4-0, everybody looked at each other. Okay, you can start writing.
Yeah, man. It was, and what was really tremendous to see is after a few games where the Blues had lost and maybe not played super well, that from my eyes where I was sitting, it really looked like the Blues came out with a purpose. Everything that they did was purposeful. It just didn't seem like they were down to leave anything to chance either. Like they came after it and they took it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it looked that way to me.
Yeah, it felt that way too. Like, because I even asked Joe before we went on the air, because Joe's got such a great idea of how the players are feeling. He's got a great relationship with them. And I said, what do you think? And he goes, this could go one of 2 ways. He goes, it could go really good or really bad. Mm-hmm. He goes, he said in that 12-game win streak, they were very light, having fun, joking around. He said it was businesslike in that locker room. And Jerry, you were down there that day, so you experienced it as well. And part of me, that made me more nervous because, like, I feel like when that team gets business-like, it's not the same as they are when they play light. Like, they were business-like on that road trip. Jim Montgomery said they were so focused on the results that they started to play poorly. But, man, they came out, and you could just tell it was a team that wasn't going to leave anything left. Mm-hmm. Like, it started like a chess match to where neither team wanted to take a chance, but then as soon as it opened up and Snuggerud got that scoring chance, it's like every single Blues player started playing back to that style. And it was a breath of fresh air because after that Seattle game, I was starting to get concerned that it was like you're starting to see the old trends. You're seeing the turnovers. They're not great in their own end. Like, what's going on? Is fatigue finally setting in?
Yeah, I think it was just a confidence across the board. Like, I think Jamie Rivers said this on 101 ESPN yesterday. He said that he went up to Zach Bolduc and said, hey, I think you got one in you tonight. I think you got 1 goal in you tonight. And he said, I got 2.
Ooh, yeah, there we go, Zach.
But then looking at the fact that he had 18, I think he just wanted to get to 20.
Yeah, I was going to say, he was trying to get to 20 on
so
that
he got one, so he got the 19. But, yeah, just confidence.
I'd say one of the most exciting things to me is I went to the game last night with somebody that's a hockey fan, but not like a diehard or anything like that. And even in just explaining to this person the sheer amount of young, talented skill guys on this team, it's really remarkable. Yeah. And I know that Winnipeg is going to be a really tough challenge in round 1, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But for the Blues to have gotten to this point, put themselves in a position to make the playoffs, and then to do it when 3 weeks ago we were like, it just makes me love this team that much more. I love, this has got to be such an amazing learning experience for these young players to be going through this right now, playing games that matters, and then on top of that, winning a lot of these games that matter too. I am just very excited, not only now, but for for the groundwork that this continues to lay for the future.
That's why at the beginning of the season, and I probably put too much emphasis on this, but I felt like it was a must to get to the playoffs this year. And obviously the front office felt that way as well with all of the moves that they made in season. But it just felt like one of those years to where you were in the middle of this retool and you couldn't afford another season of missing the playoffs. If you miss the playoffs again, that's 3 straight years of it. You've got all of these guys. You got a 25-year-old Thomas, a 24-year-old Jordan Kyrou. You've got a 30-year-old Pavel Buchnevich, and none of these younger guys have any playoff experience. And it's like this retool might take a really long time. That's why the emphasis was like, get to the playoffs so that you can have another year with Robert Thomas in the postseason, and now he gets to be the guy. Because the last time he was in the playoffs, if I'm not mistaken, Ryan O'Reilly was still here. He wasn't even the guy. And give Colton Parayko the chance to be in the playoffs as the guy. And then you want Neighbors to experience. You want Bolduc to experience. I assumed Snuggerud was going to be here. You wanted him to experience it. Now you're going to have a year of what it feels like to go on a run down the stretch, to get into the postseason, play the postseason, and build from there. Backus was the one that told us this back in that 2008-2009 season. He said, we got into the playoffs and we got swept. But we realized what it took to get to the playoffs, and then from there, we knew what needed to take place in the regular season to be a consistent playoff team.
Here's the best, shortest way I can paint the picture from my perspective, is that if Doug Armstrong, let's just say a year and a half ago, had a multiple choice questionnaire in front of him, and it said, how do you hope this plays out in the next year and a half? Where do you want to be in April 2025? You got A, B, C, D. And let's just say B says, great second half, everybody comes together, coaches in place, young players are coming up and doing their thing. You know, the core is responding. This is the one he picks. Like, I think you pick this even over things like, okay, you fall off for 3 years, but then you get a top 5 pick, and he's going to be a stud for years. Like, I feel like where the organization was and where they wanted to get to quickly, then a lot of people thought maybe, hey, do the rebuild. Like, this is the option that he would have picked in that multiple choice.
All right, so I want to ask this question, and it's been a minute since we've asked it, but season complete, seeing how the last week or so has been, minus Dylan Holloway, who we still don't know what's going on and being told week to week, but my mind just completely got
Brain
lost
fart.
in the whole. But no, I know what I was going to say. So like with Holloway out, you know, we've had the conversation a few different times on the podcast about this team's MVP for the season. If you had to pick one guy, who would it be? And I'm wondering if it shouldn't, this is funny, I'm wondering if it shouldn't collectively, all of us, be Dylan Holloway, because we have seen how difficult and how hard it was for the team to kind of get back to the level that they were playing at before he got hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, is that, and obviously his numbers were great, all of those sorts of things, but but then I say that and I'm thinking to myself, Jordan Kyrou has almost 35 goals.
How about Robert Thomas, 81 points?
Jordan Bennington.
Yeah.
I honestly think that a lot of times when you're a writer, we have assignments from the bosses that say, hey, you need to pick this, you know, MVP, or you need to pick the best, you know, player for the future, best prospect, all that stuff. And I tell myself, you can't ride the fence. You have to pick a person. We live in a business where if you're posed a question, you got to pick a guy. But I'm going to cop out here and say there isn't one. You know, screw it. This team.
Take that, bosses at The Athletic.
This team is here because of all the guys you just mentioned. I mean, if it's not for look at the fourth line. Look at them last night.
It's a great point.
Yeah, so it's Jordan Kyrou. It's Robert Thomas. It's for sure Dylan Holloway. It's Colton Parayko. It's Cam Fowler. It's Jordan Bennington.
It's Ryan Suter when you were without Broberg and didn't have Fowler for the longest time.
It's so cliche, but what we've watched is the team effort.
And this is a pack mentality. Like, Doug Armstrong has always emphasized the fact that they don't build around superstars, they build around a pack mentality. And you can have the debate, we can have the debate, if it's the right way to build, if it's the tougher way to build, but it's the way that they're going about it. And it's the way that they were from 2011 all the way up until they won the Stanley Cup. Yes, they had Vladimir Tarasenko. Yes, they had Alex Pietrangelo. None of those guys were looked as superstars in the National Hockey League. When they won in that era, it was because of Backus and Schwartz, and it was because of Ryan O'Reilly and Colton Parayko and Petrangelo and Bouwmeester, they've always built that way. And that's the way they're going about this now. It's why the Dylan Holloway injury is so scary, I guess, for some Blues fans, because, I mean, with the guy not skating, it doesn't seem like he's going to be back for you in this postseason run. And yeah, you hit the struggles when you lost him, but as a pack mentality, you figure out how to adapt. And when you figure out how to adapt, well, now you've got the chemistry back. And that's what I felt like happened last night. You saw the benefits of Neighbors playing with Thomas and Buchnevich. That line should not be broken up. They play well together. You saw the benefits of that WTF line. It should never be broken up. And I think Snuggerud looked like he adapted really well with Braden Chen and Jordan Kyrou. So now you get back to this whole mindset of like, cool, we've got our chemistry back. We can roll 4 lines. Our defense is healthy. And now we can run with this. That's the pack mentality.
Yeah, and I think, let's not gloss over the Holloway injury for just a second here, because I know people listening to the pod or following on social media or whatever, like, okay, well, what is the deal with Holiday? Well, we don't have any specifics, but when you've been around the team long enough, such as you, Alex,
no, not as long as you did,
and you talk to people, you just know and get a sense when things are serious, and this is a serious injury. Now, people might say, well, right away they said day to day. That's because the Blues came out and said that he's still at the doctor, he's going to miss 2 games at least, and then we'll see what's up with that. And then they came back later that day and said, hey, he came back from the doc. It's not the news we wanted. It's week to week. And as we all know, week to week in the NHL playoffs could mean season to season.
Right.
You know, so anyway, I don't think, just to be clear here, that any Blues fan should have the impression that Dylan Holloway is going to be back soon.
Well, and that's the part for me too. Like, I think what's happened is Blues fans saw Connor McDavid do this, where Edmonton was like, yeah, he's not available, and then he shows up and plays. Colton Parayko, Jim Montgomery made the comments of, like, it's doubtful, and then he shows up and plays. And I think there's Blues fans that are like, well, maybe Dylan Holloway, maybe they're playing coy with this so that he can come out and play.
That's what I thought, dude.
The McDavid had been practicing with Edmonton for multiple weeks. Colton Parayko had been practicing with the Blues for months. Dylan Holloway didn't go with that team on the trip. Jim Montgomery said before they went on the trip, he took the ice and did some stick handling work. That was it. We don't know if he skated, and even if he has been skating, he's not skating with the team. And before you even get on the ice with the team, you got to go through the no contact. And then when you get on the ice, the contact comes into play. But we don't even know if he's skating.
Right.
So if he's not skating, you're talking, this is a serious injury, and that's why there's no point in looking at this as, oh, he's going to come back and, the Tommy Trumpet sound's going to go off and Dylan Holloway's going to show up for game 1. It does not feel that way.
Well, I want to ask a question here. One of the things that I love so much about this team, and we've talked about, and I think it goes into the pack mentality aspect of it, but it seems like any time that a Blues player gets into a scuffle, that Blues player is not alone, that there is another Blues player coming up. It just seems from a fan that this is absolutely a team where the guys are fighting for each other every night. Do you believe that that's the case? Do sometimes we as fans overlook that sort of thing? Am I overlooking, am I looking a little too close with rose-colored glasses with this? It just seems very different than other Blues teams in the past, specifically when it comes to being around Bennington. It used to be a couple of years ago, you could friggin' run the guy and you'd get a dirty look. Like that was it. And now, if you friggin' breathe on him, there's 4 Blues players there ready to kick your ass.
Donnie, I think this ties into what we've been talking about for the past few minutes in that
pack mentality.
The pack mentality, and the Blues don't necessarily have an MVP. So if you're a Colorado and you got a McKinnon, you're a Edmonton, you have Draisaitl, McDavid, like you can count on those guys almost every night to produce and help you win the game if it's there to be had. The Blues have had so many different contributions from all these guys. It's difficult as a GM to build a team like that because you're counting on so many parts to come together to lead you to success. You're not just throwing 29 out there for Colorado and saying, okay, go win us the game. So when you attempt to do that, and things don't come together. This guy has an off year. This guy's not really into it. These guys don't get along. Then that success is a lot more difficult to be had. And I think that's what we've seen in St. Louis for the past couple of years. But when it comes together, it comes together. And I think Braden Chen said it best last night. He said, it took a while. We've been trying to do this for a couple of years, but we needed to get guys to realize that your individual performance will come if you're playing the team game. You'll be happy not only with the team, but you will be happy with yourself and your performance if you subscribe to this mentality. And so what happened is they did. The team came together, the results came together, and all these individual guys that we just talked about saw their personal results, and then it's like, well, you're not messing with my brother. Look what we created here.
Right.
So all that stuff that we just talked about, that pack mentality, leads to this brotherhood that has just developed.
And I think it comes with a lot of the players individually, too, that they brought in. Like, think of Radek Faksa and how he's played this season. You know, think of Ryan Suter and the 40-year-old veteran that's done a lot of this. You know, they've had Tyler Tucker in there. You bring in a Holloway and Broberg. And I also think teams have to hit rock bottom before they can get to this point. And felt like the last 2 years have been that for the Blues, specifically last year, that saw Craig Berube fired, brought in Drew Bannister, went on a run, but then missed the playoffs because they went back to that individual style at the end of the season, and then they were once again out of it. And I specifically remember we had Robert Thomas on with us after that season was over last year, and he said, look, it sucks. He's like, I hate missing the playoffs. I've never done this before where I've missed it multiple years. I've always been in it. And at some point, when you're Thomas, when you're Kyrou, when you're Pavel Buchnevich, you don't like this anymore. And I think that's what the last 2 years were. Then when they saw another coach fired, it felt like it was to the point where there was no more of this, hey, you need to get on board. Everyone understood what the assignment was.
So Winnipeg in the first round, you know, one of the things that has been sort of a thread throughout this podcast over the course of the last year or so is the thought that Winnipeg is a machine in the regular season, and then the playoffs come. Hellebuck is tired because he has, been the guy all friggin' year, and they cannot make it past, the first round or cannot get to where they need to be. Now, to me, this team, above almost any other NHL playoff team this year, has got something to prove in a big kind of way. Does this sort of help the Blues a little bit in the fact that, if there's any pressure in this series, it is squarely on Winnipeg. I feel like the Blues are just completely playing with house money at this point, right?
That's where I'm at. It does feel like. Now, I'm not going to say that the Blues have the advantage in this series.
No, and I don't mean to say that either.
Winnipeg is a juggernaut.
No, I'm joking.
Yeah, I was going to say, Donnie's a big Jets fan for people that don't know. Lift your shirt up, Donnie. I know there's a Jets tattoo on there.
Dude, it's a white T-shirt with nacho cheese stains on it, probably.
Nacho cheese stains. That's from last night at the Blues game.
Seriously.
You got to wipe your hands somewhere, you know what I mean?
And keep the shirt on. Why not? You smell cheese while you're sleeping at night. I think the Jets are a really well put together team, and when you have that pressure of like we have to win, it can either do one of two things. It's either going to make you have the yips when you're on the ice because you know you can't make a mistake, or it's going to make you a juggernaut. And I'm a little worried about it being the latter. But the Blues have nothing. They have nothing to play for here. Like, they weren't expected to be in this position. Like, now you just go out there. There's no pressure on them to be. You're a playoff team. That's what they wanted in this. And now you go out there and you just play the Jets. Frankly, it's a little bit what it was like back in 2019, to where the Jets were the team that was second place in their division, and they were playing really well down the stretch. And the Blues were like, hey, we weren't even supposed to be here. And they went out there and they beat them in 6 games. So I don't know what the series is going to hold. Frankly, I always lean on the goaltender, and I'd give Jordan Binnington the upper hand over Hellebuck in the playoffs. But, man, Winnipeg is big, Winnipeg is nasty, and Winnipeg does not let you get to the front of the net, and that is going to be the biggest challenge without Dylan Holloway.
Yeah, and they're a really, really good team. We saw it last week. I know the Blues didn't have Binnington in the lineup, and Holloway wasn't in there, but they're a really, really good team. I could easily see Winnipeg winning this series. Here's the thing. What the Blues have to do is create doubt. And so everybody going into the series is going to say, hey, pressure's on Winnipeg, and it is, for sure. But if Winnipeg scores 2 goals in the first period of Game 1, and, you can obviously bounce back in the series, but if the Blues can take a 2-0 lead in Game 1, now all of a sudden the Winnipeg players start skating around and thinking, gosh, everybody's talking to me, what are we going to do here?
Yeah.
And can they respond? And if they do, yeah, they're a great team. They can. But if you can create that doubt, that's where the Blues can get the upper hand and then play with that house money like you're talking about.
Is there any – so you say you give Binner the advantage over Hellebuck in the goaltending side. But as far as and I don't want this to go negative, but as far as, forwards, as far as defensemen, would you probably give Winnipeg the advantage in both? In defense, probably.
No, I'd give Blues the advantage in the defense.
Okay, all right.
Especially for experience. Curbs mentioned this lesson on the broadcast. Every one of the players that played last night has played in a conference final game. They've got a ton of, over 5,000 games played that was in the lineup last night. I would give the Blues the advantage on defense. Now, Winnipeg is bigger, and Winnipeg is stronger in front of their net, but I think the Blues are more mobile and agile to where they can create in the offensive zone. Now, Winnipeg's got Morrissey, who's a stud of a player, but if you've got Parayko and Broberg and Fowler playing 23 minutes a night, you're in a good position, in my opinion. I think the advantage goes to Winnipeg on the forward side. Since you don't have Dylan Holloway, that is a massive loss in terms of your depth. Now, does Snuggerud fill those shoes a little bit? He's looked good and he's built some confidence. So maybe he's got some chemistry with Shen and Kyrou. But when I look at Winnipeg and you've got Scheifele and you've got Kyle Connor and Gabe Vilardi, I mean, they're 4 lines deep to where they can roll whomever they want. The Nikolai Ehlers injury to Winnipeg is big because I don't think he's going to be playing in the playoffs either. They labeled him week to week and it was a foot injury. But I would give Winnipeg the advantage for now at the forward position just because of the depth.
Yeah, and I think we know what their strength is. They're big, and they can be physical, just like the Blues were in 2019. So that's going to be to their advantage. How much of an advantage the Blues let it be, I think that's the key. And, the goaltending is going to be interesting because, you look at Hellebuck and you look at Bennington, both of them played in the Four Nations.
Four Nations rematch.
Yeah. Both of them did not get a break. And
Hellebuck was rode all the way this season. I think he played like 65, 68 games, I believe is what it was.
Yeah, where people, let's talk about it here. People were saying, why is Joel Hofer starting tonight? This is a game where you got to have Bennington. Well, you needed to rest your guy to have him ready for the series.
So I just want to ask about this. So I understand that with Connor Hellebuck, you have a bit of a unicorn in the NHL, and there's not a lot of those guys that are ridden like that every year. It seems like it's getting more of like the running back share in the NFL kind of deal. But I'm just kind of flummoxed by this. If you've seen Hellebuck lose steam before, why you're going to continue to ride him unless, I don't know, I'm just a little confused by why you wouldn't pull back on him a little bit to make sure that he's fresh the way that Benner seems to be a little bit more fresh at this stage of the season.
I mean, that's a great question. One is, I don't know if they would trust their backup goaltender the same way that the Blues trusted Joel Hofer because, and I don't know as much about isn't it Brossois, I believe, who is. So it's a guy that has experience, but you got Connor Hellebuck. Plus, I think it comes down to the player, too. Like when
I think he's a guy that just wants to.
Yeah, when Graham Fuhr says, I'm playing every single game, you're not going to say, hey, no, we need to lighten the load. No, he's Graham freaking Fuhr.
You want that guy to be that guy that doesn't want to leave the net.
I mean, I would question Winnipeg's usage when you've already locked up the President's Trophy and you're the best team in the Western Conference. Do you really need to play 62? Could it be 55?
Right. The only thing is, if you secure that number 1, then you're playing a wild card as opposed to playing Dallas or Colorado. If you slip to 2,
fair.
All right. That was just something. And just the configuration of how that has worked or not worked over the last couple of years is where I had that question.
And I should make it like I'm the biggest fault for this because I do say that Hellebuck is a choke artist in the playoffs. Last year was his worst year. He has had series where he's been great, and Winnipeg hasn't backed him up. I think it was 2 years ago. He had like a .927 save percentage in the postseason, and they still lost in the first round. So there have been other holes than Connor Hellebuck. I'm just going off of the series that they played against the Blues where he wasn't the guy that made the big save, and I'm going off of last year where I think he had an .867 save percentage. He's a guy that can be leaky at times, but the only way he's leaky is when you put bodies in front of the net. Like, think back to 2019. How did the Blues score those goals on him? Jaden Schwartz standing in front of the net. Pat Maroon standing in front of the net. You're going to have to find a way to get in on the defenseman if you want to beat Winnipeg.
All right, and any idea, guys, as to when this series is supposed to start?
I think what Alex and I both heard is that...
Not to put you on the spot, because I know that this can change, and you don't officially know until the season is over and that sort of thing, but you know more than me.
It can totally change, but I think we'll see Game 1 Saturday. I think we can count on that, and then after that, it's still not official.
Because all the events and the arenas that they have to figure out what to do.
Yeah, and by the time this pod hits the air this afternoon, I think we're going to know something officially by the end of the business day, but they're sorting through it. I mean, I think they hope to play every other day, but like Alex said, at Enterprise next Friday and Saturday. Concerts are scheduled, Brooks and Dunn, Cat Williams. So if they can maneuver those things around, I think they'd like to play every other day. But at this point, we just know Saturday in Winnipeg.
Yeah, because I know the NHL they have done it before where they'll space games out with like 2 days off. They prefer not to do that.
Please no.
Yeah,
Please no.
especially JR out in Winnipeg. That park is going to look great for 2 days. Joey said it was supposed to be like 30 degrees
That's
when
what
you get
Donnie
out there.
just looked up.
Yeah, it's like 40s and 50s.
But then it goes back down to 30 next week. Yeah.
And the nighttime, you don't want to be outside, is what I've heard.
But here's the other reason. Not only are you out of town for an extra couple days, but it's also when you sit down for that second off day with the coach and the players up at the podium.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think about Game 3? You think you can come back after that performance in Game 2? Like, what else are you going to ask after 2 days off? Like, let's just...
And plus, Winnipeg sucks the life out of you, so there's not a whole lot of energy there, too. So, I mean, it's... I've heard Saturday as well. This could fluctuate. It could go to Sunday, but the hope is that it would be a Saturday and then a Monday, and then you go from there to where it would be... What would that be? Wednesday here, but again, that could all really shift. The only thing that we know certain is it sounds like Saturday is when they start.
I meant to mention this earlier. We were talking specifically about the game last night, but a big, friggin' massive shout out to number 21, Jimmy Snuggerud, getting his very first NHL goal last night. I loved that, and I don't exactly know what player it was, but in the vantage point that I had, everybody went over to congratulate Snuggerud, and I wish I could have seen the player who beelined to the goal.
Bolduc.
What is it, Bolduc? To make sure that he got on the puck.
Bolduc was so freaking excited for him. Like, if you see the camera shot of him, he had the biggest grin on his face. He was jumping up and down, and then he was the one that grabbed it and then went right towards Snuggerud.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Think of that, though, for a minute. Like, you miss your opportunity to score your first NHL goal on a breakaway, and Shen still scores. So you're still pumped. You get the assist. And then you score your first NHL goal, and then you got to wait for 2 minutes because they think you kicked the puck in. So, like, you've had 3 different moments where it was like, I scored my first NHL goal, and it's like, you got to be bleeping kidding me.
Sit there on the
So
bench.
I can't wait to ask him about that, like, the amount of waiting that took place and all of that.
Yeah, and we, it's so cool to be standing a couple feet away from him in the locker room and witnessing what he's going through. Because, he's drafted and you interview him and you write the story and maybe he's going to be a Blue in 2-3 years, whatever. And then you have the fans who say, he didn't sign this year. He's never coming here. He's going to opt out. And then Minnesota Wild are going to sign him. He wants to play for his hometown team. Okay, well, now here he is in the flesh, scoring goals with his skates.
Yeah.
Right? And so we kind of circle around him last night and he's like, I just text my mom, text my dad. And then... he got to a point where he's talking about the playoffs and how exciting it's going to be. And here he's played, 7 games now,
7
Alex?
games. And he's got 4 points in 7 games.
And he's standing there, and he's 20 years old, and he's getting ready to go play a series in one of the loudest buildings in the history of the NHL. And I just looked at him, and I said, how are you looking like you're just unfazed by all of this? And he goes, just... media trained, I guess.
JR's like, hell yes.
So, but I'm going to ask this question, and I really believe that I know the answer. It seems as though that this Blues coaching staff has a lot of trust in this young man because it seems as though he is out there in big parts of the game. Mm-hmm. This is not a young player that's being put on the 3rd and 4th line and getting, 7-8 minutes a game.
Wasn't he 7-18?
I think he was 17.
Yeah.
I mean, he's getting... A really amazing look here, which tells you, the coaches must absolutely think he's doing what he's doing the right way.
Well, what was Jim Montgomery's quote to you guys about Jimmy? I mean, it was a quote that I saw, and I'm like, hot damn.
Yeah, I think yesterday I asked Jim Montgomery, I said, hey, listen, Billy Guerin, the GM in Minnesota, said that the young prospect Zeev by him is going to come in and play for the Wild. He said, these guys are just built differently today than they were in the past. I said, so what makes Jimmy ready for this situation? And he said he just has created chances and done things that make it look like he's been here a lot longer than he's been.
Said it looks like he's been a Blue for longer than what he's been, which is like, I mean, he's right too. There's not been one game that I've watched. The first game he played, I was like, okay, he's getting shoved off the puck a little bit. Like, he got hit around a couple of times against Detroit, and it's like, okay, you got to put on some muscle in the offseason. After that, though, I mean, has he had a moment where you watch and you're like, ooh, rookie mistake? I really don't think so. I mean, look at last night. That goal or that breakaway that he had, he started the play. He was pressuring Nick Schmaltz all the way to the corner to force Schmaltz to shoot that puck, which he shot it right into Parayko's skate. Parayko bounces it to Buchnevich, and Buchnevich sends Snuggerud off to the races. That's not what a 18, 19-year-old kid
Yeah.
does when he makes his first NHL game. Like, that's a dude who's played in the league for a couple of years.
And maybe he does get clobbered in the playoffs. Maybe he does look like a guy who's played 7 games in his career. But as we talked about earlier, how much better will Jimmy Snuggerud be when the puck drops next October 6th or whatever because of what he's going through right now and what role they've put him in? It's
And I remember Bolduc telling us last year, and they didn't even make the playoffs. He said, I've got to put on more muscle this offseason. And what did he do? He came back, and he looked bigger than what he did the year prior.
Do you think that this also maybe fuels the Dvorsky fire a little bit to be like, hey man, I'm not out there, and god dang it, I gotta be. So you start to see this guy hanging out 2-3 friggin' hours after practice. Like I just feel like we have got just a ton of those types of guys.
Yeah, I saw him leaving the press box last night in his street clothes and cap or whatever, and just normal, just walking through the press box there, but it's with the noise and with the team celebrating and all that. There's no way it cannot make you put every ounce of effort.
And that's an interesting one. Do you think he stays with the team, or does he go back to Springfield? Because Texier's back now. At least he's skating with the team. Now, I don't know if he's available. And with the Thunderbirds, I think they begin the playoffs, if not this weekend, next weekend.
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know the answer. I guess if, hand to the fire, I would think they keep him around for this, but you're right. Yeah, it's tough not to have him there, but
especially if you're not going to play him in one of those in one of the playoff games,
and that's
right?
why with Texier.
And I don't mean to interrupt.
No, not at all. Probably not play, but you just never know.
Yeah. Especially, I know Robert Thomas. They said afterwards yesterday that he was fine. It was precautionary, which I know people were like, yeah, sure, precautionary reason. It did. Like watching him, he was talking to Barilli the whole time. He got up, he did a lap around the ice, and then he went back to the bench. His lap looked fine, and then it was like, no, he walked off. And you were up by 4 at that point. Yeah. If I'm Jim Montgomery, I'm saying the same thing. Dude, leave the ice. Right. If it gets close, then come back, but just don't bleep this up.
I would love to not see you.
I'm 100% with you, and I think that's probably the case. The only thing that gives me a little pause here is, so I tweeted that Robert Thomas, Montgomery says out for precautionary reasons, should be fine. And I looked down at my phone, and there was a tweet from a Boston Bruins reporter, a friend of mine, Steve Conroy, and he said, precautionary reasons. I've heard this before, talking about what Montgomery has said about players and their health in the past, because here's a guy who's covered Montgomery, so he's heard that phrase a lot.
Sure.
Damn it. Why did he have to text you? God, screw that guy.
Well, guys, I mean, it's a really friggin' amazing thing that we get to not only, we would be continuing the podcast anyway, but we got hockey to talk about, Blues hockey to talk about specifically. So, we'll get the podcast up and running again as the playoffs keep going. Thank you very much for listening to the Last Minute Blues podcast. For our homie Jeff Burton, who would absolutely be eating this team up. He would love them so much.
Who would his favorite player be right now? Because he's a big Clem Shady guy.
Yeah, he would have been. I'll tell you what, I bet you that his love affair with Jake Neighbors would be deep and almost disturbing.
I was going to say Bolduc.
Yeah,
Neighbors,
I
was thinking Bolduc, but Neighbors makes sense. He's an old school guy.
No, you know what? I think it would have been Bolduc because it would have been that shot. That shot would have titillated Jeff. I will put money on it.
And he used titillated with Jeff, which also plays.
Alex Ferrario from 101 ESPN, Jeremy Rutherford from The Athletic. I'm Donnie Fandango. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Last Minute Blues podcast. And as always, let's go Blues!
The Last Minute Blues podcast. Hear more at 1057thepoint.com.